What is up, wrestling fans? Smackdown Stew here for another edition of the Smackdown Stew report right here on the Smackdown Stew YouTube channel. We're here on Thursday, September 11th, 2025, on the 24th anniversary of the deadliest terrorist attack on American soil. So we're going to do things differently today. We're going to remember 9/11, go back in time and remember 9/11, and which marked our history. And also the WWE was the first organization that said we're going to keep the show going. We're going to still have SmackDown that Thursday. 2 days later, we're going to dedicate it to America, and we're going to let the wrestlers talk about 9/11 and share their thoughts. So we're going to touch on that in a little bit. Of course, always don't forget to subscribe to the Smackdown Stew YouTube channel. Like the episode, you can send an email to our email address, smackdownstewchannel at gmail.com. That's smackdownstewchannel at gmail.com. And you can check the Facebook page, comment there, and you can also comment right here on the SmackDown, right here on the SmackDown Stew report, right here in the comments, and give me some comments. And I want to first touch on the tragedy that happened yesterday in Utah, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, which is an American nonprofit organization that advocates for conservative politics on high school, college, and university campuses. And that was a travesty yesterday. Charlie Kirk was doing what he always did, going around to college campuses, debating the students and giving them a chance to speak, and debated them, but they never had answers. He was fantastic at answering them and was gunned down by in a senseless shooting by a deranged person because they didn't share the same views. He was shot with a high-powered rifle from a rooftop adjacent the event and was shot in the neck. And I'm telling you, it had to be a professional hit. The person had to be trained, maybe perhaps in the American military, because it was a sniper. If you see the footage, and it's gory, viewer discretion is advised when you look at that footage, you see the shot to his neck and the blood pouring out. So the sniper actually had his target. He was precise. And there was rumors that Kirk was actually wearing a bulletproof vest. So he knew where to target it, and it's a shame. I'd like to read you also a tweet before we get into the latest developments with this. He tweeted out on April 7th of this year, assassination culture is spreading on the left. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 55% said the same about Donald Trump. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy. Any setback, whether losing an election or losing a court case, justifies a maximally violent response. This is the natural outgrowth of left-wing protest culture of tolerating violence and mayhem for years on end. The cowardice of local prosecutors and school officials have turned the left into a ticking time bomb. And unfortunately, he was right. He was the victim of that ticking time bomb, Charlie Kirk. And the latest development is that there is a witness. There is a homeowner who owns several homes around the area of the Utah University where Charlie Kirk was shot, that claims that his security camera in his driveway appears to show the person of interest running through backyards a block after the shooting, and the streets near that wooded area where he dumped the rifle. So the speculation is he dumped the rifle and ran through the backyards and through a back alley. And this person claims that his security camera catches the person of interest. So the police and the agents from the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives were at the home. One of them climbed the ladder and removed the entire floodlight and confiscated the home security camera to try and catch this person of interest, because this guy needs to be found. Is he local? Was he paid to do this? Maybe he took a flight and peeled out of the United States. So, we need to find this guy, and capture him. Is he local? Did he hide it? Because they didn't release footage. They say he jumped off the roof on the other side of the building through the back alley. So it's only a matter of time before this person is found, and we'll see if he was a pansy, if he was like Lee Harvey Oswald, that he was told and was paid to take Charlie Kirk and to paid to kill Charlie Kirk. So we'll have to see about that. But it's a senseless tragedy in the U.S. for somebody to be killed because of his opinions. Somebody to take a life because of his opinions. Some say controversial about Black Lives Matter, about the transgender community, about gun control, because he was a supporter of the Fifth Amendment. So it's very, very sad. Charlie Kirk's casket arrived in Arizona. Was supposed to have been on Air Force Two, the plane that carries the vice president, who was supposed to have flown to Utah and bring back the body and the family. This is a senseless tragedy. He was a father of two beautiful children. He was a husband, and now his wife, a widow, his children fatherless because of some maniac who didn't believe in his politics. It's very senseless. It is sad, and it brings a narrative that it's okay if you don't agree with the politics. If you can't beat him, kill him. And that's absolutely enraging. It's absolutely deplorable. And I hope this guy is brought to justice. And I offer my deepest condolences and prayers and thoughts to the family of Charlie Kirk, his wife, and his two beautiful children. Now we're going to do our remembrance of 9/11. Hard to believe 24 years has passed since the deadliest attack on American soil, 9/11. And I remember where I was when that happened. I wasn't working at the time. I was about 19. And I was in the living room relaxing. And the phone rang in the house. It was my mother's friend telling her America Under Attack, put on the TV. So my mother yelled out, put on the TV, America Under Attack. So I grabbed the remote, turned on the TV to CNN, and I saw the second plane crashing into the towers, and it was unbelievable. I said, what the heck is going on here? It was probably a replay at the time. And then saw these two big buildings, one on fire, and then eventually, moments later, collapsing and killing over 3,000 Americans. And also there was a plane that hit the Pentagon and then crashed in Pennsylvania. So the first plane hit at 8:46 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It was American's Flight 11, was traveling from Boston to Los Angeles, struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. At 9:03, United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Then some half an hour later at 9:37, American Airlines Flight 77, which was traveling from Dulles, Virginia to Los Angeles, strikes the Pentagon building in Washington. And then at 10:03 a.m., American Flight 93 crashes in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And of course, the North Tower collapsed at 10:28. And then the collapse of both World Trade Centers in 102 minutes. So the first plane entered. Now, the first plane entered the World Trade Center, entered straight on into the World Trade Center, and took out all the exits in that building from from above the crash. So everybody who was working in the World Trade Center, the Northern Tower, that was above the crash, were trapped. They were screwed. There was no way out. The first responders and the rescuers could not reach them because all the stairways have been blown out. Helicopters couldn't get close because there were antennas on the top of that building, for TV that were on fire, that were, and they couldn't get too close. They couldn't have water because they couldn't get too close because of the flames. And then and the people in the South Tower the North Tower started to evacuate the people under. The South Tower, people started to evacuate when they saw the debris and the flames and everything. And some of them were told, and that's a big mistake by the Coast Guard. There was when they started going down the stairs in the South Tower to evacuate, there was a message over the PA system from the Coast Guard saying that the South Tower is secure. Please return to your offices. If you're heading down, we need the space in the front of the buildings to for all the people that are evacuating out of the North Tower. And that was a mistake. Why? Because the second plane at 9:03 a.m. that United Airlines flight 175 crashed into the South Tower. Now, the South Tower workers were a little bit more lucky, but not by much. That plane came in on an angle, so it left one exit down, one emergency exit intact. So people above the crash were able to go to that staircase, but a lot of people couldn't find it in the smoke and wasn't aware that one was intact, and also perished. And the media, the first plane, I remember, and I've been watching different YouTube videos of how the media covered this event. And first, and you see, was first on NBC, on ABC, which was, of course, NBC was the Today Show, and ABC was Good Morning America, and then the CBS morning show, of course, Fox and everything. And NBC, Matt Lauer was talking with Richard Hatch, who wrote a book and stopped the interview mid-interview because of the World Trade Center, and they all showed the picture of that burning World Trade Center. But at the beginning, nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew, was it a plane a pilot that just mistook and went into the World Trade Center, because a plane did hit the Empire State Building. And so nobody knew what was going on at that point. You're showing the flames, people were getting their reaction, and then all of a sudden, you see the second plane come into the frame and another explosion. And that's when the narrative changed in the coverage from being an accident to an act of terrorism, because both towers were hit. And, it was crazy. You hear stories from inside the World Trade Center, people trying to make it out, and of the guy with the red bandana who perished but was helping people, and the first responders trying to get the people, and which we'll share in a moment. And then at 9:59 a.m., at 9:37 a.m., the United Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon building in Washington. And you see a big hole. And everybody's saying, what the heck is going on here? Everybody's saying, what's going on here now? So now we know it's a terrorist attack. And then around 4 minutes later, at 10:03, the American Airlines Flight 93 crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and it was said that the crew overpowered the terrorists and forced the plane to crash. And what tipped off the people in air traffic control was that Mohammed Atta, the one who flew into the the northern tower, the first tower. He wanted to speak to the passengers, but pressed the wrong button and ended up speaking to air traffic control, and they heard him basically confirming that they were hijacking the plane. So, but they couldn't get they tried to alert the U.S. Air Force, but they couldn't get to the plane in time. So when you look back on it, and then yeah, of course, at 10:28, or should I say 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed in 10 seconds, and I'll get to that point in a moment. Then at 10:28, half an hour later, or almost, the North Tower collapsed because of all the rubble and everything, and that caused, between that and the Pentagon, and Shanksville, 3,000 casualties, 3,000 deaths. And of course, then everybody started pointing the finger at Osama bin Laden. Of course, tapes were released about 2 months later, or 3 months later, rather, that shows Osama bin Laden taking responsibility for the attacks. Now, people are saying that, and there's a whole bunch of missing people still to this day, that people's bodies weren't found because they were more than likely charred. First responders, people in the building helping people. There's a story, there's a story that was told by a Canadian, and I heard him on multiple different documentaries, named Brian Clark. He was working at Eurobrokers on one of the upper floors of the World Trade Center. He was in his office, had his coffee. He was answering some emails and looking through his emails, and he heard a big boom, and the lights kind of flickered. And then he looked outside, and he saw paper on fire going down, and bits and pieces of paper and things, And he looked out, and then a woman who worked in his office, who he credits with saving his life, came into his office and said, "Oh, Brian," because he got up from his seat and looked, "Oh, Brian, it's terrible. People are jumping and they're jumping and everything. They're jumping out, and it's on fire." So he comforted her and said, "Let's go to the bathroom," which was on the other side of the building. And he credits her with saving his life, because when he went to the other side of the building, that's when the plane hit the South Tower. Boom. The lights flickered again, and and he was a safety coordinator, so he put on his whistle and he started to get people going, and they ended up finding a stairway, and they had to push some rubble, and they went down, and while they were going down, people were going up, and he found this guy named Stanley Primnam, who was buried under a desk. He heard a voice, went into the floor, and ended up pulling the guy out of the rubble, and they became friends. He says, "We're going to be friends for life." He kissed him. He said, "We're going to be friends for life now. You saved my life." And they got out. And he said that the most scary moment of that was that once the first plane hit, the building started swaying to his right. For, well, I mean, this is my, to his right, the plane started swaying and going and going and going and going, to his right for about 10 seconds, and then straightened up. He thought that they were going over. But he made it out, and then once he made it out and they got to the bridge, they looked back, and and Stanley Primnam said that building is going to collapse, and Brian's like, "No," and all of a sudden the building came down. There are also other harrowing stories of people, trying to save lives and everything. It was crazy. Now, people say, and I don't want to touch on that too much, but people say that it looked like it was controlled demolition, that the way the towers fell, there was an explosion, and that the USA might have been behind it, that did it on purpose to wage war with Iraq in the end. And I don't know. To me, because look, the building was on fire for a long time, and it's not that the bars, is that the weight, because the plane is so heavy, when we went in, the weight of the plane and everything, and and the smoke, the building couldn't withstand it. And now the new Freedom Tower, which I've been to the top of, has two staircases, one for the public and the workers, and one for the first responders, so they can get up without having to go through people. Um, you know, it was a tragedy, and it, it it was something I've never seen before. I said, "What in the world is going on? Why? What's going on?" And then they blamed Bin Laden. They said that it was Bin Laden. It was definitely a terrorist attack. There was reports of car bombs, but the news coverage, they had to weed out the wrong information, because people were saying that it was a car bomb, but it wasn't a car bomb. There was no car bombs there at the point, and people, it was crazy. The buildings collapsed. People got injured with debris. People ended up getting cancer from the smoke and the dust and everything. There was a lot of casualties, and the people from all across the U.S. and Canada came to help and try and dig up and either look for survivors or look for the bodies so people would have closure. But people were charred, and you hear the stories about people who were supposed to be in the World Trade Center, but they were on one of the flights that was crashing into the World Trade Center. It was something. And the WWE, like I said, did on the Thursday, 24 years ago today, did Smackdown, and they said, we're going to keep doing it. We're going to entertain, and we're going to let the superstars share their thoughts about the tragedy. And the one person that struck me, that was, what he said struck me, and was angry in his comments. And really, he said, you had to sit and watch America get attacked in the Oklahoma bombing by some maniac, and Robert Koresh in Texas in Waco got, there was an attack, there was a fire by some maniac, and now he says somebody attacked America. And he says, he was from Texas, John Bradshaw Layfield, Bradshaw at the time, and said that he supported George W. Bush, President Bush at the time. And his message was, you out there, we're going to find your ass. No, he said, you out there who did this, we're going to find your ass, and we're going to turn your country into a stinky parking lot. God bless the state of Texas. God bless America, and God rest the people who did this. We will find you. It was very poignant, and that was one that I'll always remember when it comes to 9/11 and when people started coming back. And it shows, people, and how easy it was for these pilots to get licenses, to get through security. The intelligence was lacking. There was thought of intelligence, but no matter how you slice it, 3,000 Americans lost their life. Lost their life in that tragedy, and husbands, fathers, mothers, grandparents, relatives, friends, coworkers, and my point of view, they want to cripple all the aspects of the US. So by knocking down the World Trade Centers, they were crippling the financial aspect of the US. By hitting the Pentagon, they wanted to hit the national security of the United States, hit that point. And the plane that was headed towards Washington that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, it is my belief it was going to hit the Capitol and hit the politicians. That was the third. They were going financial, they were going security, and they were going political. To me, that's where it was going. And it was crazy. Now, I want to just get back to the end of the show about Charlie Kirk. The FBI is going to give an update, but authorities have released more images of the assassin. They released more images of the person of interest. The image shows a man wearing a black shirt, flag. blue jeans, blue jeans, and a gray cap. He was also seen with a black backpack, and they offered the FBI offered a $100,000 bounty um, in the capture of this guy. And of course, the police have zeroed in on the street near the campus. The person of interest in the assassination. He is suspected of fleeing down the street in the immediate aftermath of the killing. A police officer on the scene said that authorities are conducting forensic scanning of the tight-knit neighborhood where one family owns most of the property. So they're getting the footage, and for me, and if you out there have any information on the suspect, you could call the number here. If you have any, there's a tip line. You can call 1-800-CALL-FBI. 1-800-CALL-FBI, $100,000 reward to help for catching the person of interest in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. President Trump has reached out to the family of Charlie Kirk and the wife, and she's devastated. They had a long talk, and I'm sure there'll be some kind of there is already a national thing happening where the flags are at half staff, and it's if you have that, and it's crazy. Of course, it looks like the Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen was a friend of Kirk. And so, yeah, there. Call 1-800-CALL-FBI, 1-800-CALL-FBI if you have any information into the whereabouts of this person of interest that assassinated Charlie Kirk. And of course, and his possible getaway was retraced after the campus killing, where he went. And we got to find this guy and bring him to justice. And it is very, very, very sad that somebody gets killed for their views. It is, and especially the day before 9/11. So obviously this guy, this human piece of filth, he obviously, and that's what tells me he might be a patriot. He might be in the armed forces. He might be something of that nature, because he did it. Of course, it was on the 10th, but didn't want to overshadow 9/11. And also, he must have had training in firearms. It must have been in the military, because that precise shot in the part of the neck, like I said before, was precise, right in the jugular vein. And even before I saw the gory footage, when I heard he was shot in the neck, I said, there is no way we're going to get a breaking news bulletin that says that he passed away. And unfortunately, he did at 31 years old, making the man a widow, making the man's wife a widow, making his children fatherless, and will have to now only rely on stories about their father and not memories. And it is a travesty at its finest, in America. In Canada, and I'll give an example, when Brian Mulroney passed away, Jean Chrétien, the former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, who, when he came out and talked to the media about the late Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, said, listen, yes, we didn't agree politically. We were against each other politically, but we were not enemies. We're friends. And this might incite a civil war. It is unfathomable that in the U.S., that if you don't agree with their politics, freedom of speech was taken away. Freedom of speech was taken away in the most vile way, the most horrific way, and it is crazy. And where was the security in the university? How did this guy go through the campus with a bag and nobody got tipped off? Was it small enough? Did he have to just attach the rifle? How was security not tipped off? Why was there no security at this event? There were thousands of people there. We know this guy is controversial. There's reports he wore a bulletproof vest. Where was the security in that university? Um, and why was somebody allowed to get in there? Why wasn't everybody searched for a controversial figure? That we'll never know. We'll hopefully get that explained, and hopefully this guy, this human piece of filth, will get caught. Well, and that's it for now. Again, I want to offer my deepest condolences to Charlie Kirk's family and his wife and his beautiful children. America lost somebody important and lost its dignity in the outcome. I thank you for joining us for this very special episode of the Smackdown Stew Report. We'll see you next time. Rest in peace, Charlie. You will be missed.